With the British tank tech tree consisting of 100 vehicles, it is easy to think that the tech tree must be fairly complete with regards to important vehicles. But a quick search shows that there are still many important British tanks that need adding to War Thunder. In this episode, I will be taking a look at some of these tanks and discussing why I think they should be added to War Thunder. The first of these tanks is the Cruiser Tank Mark 1, or A9, and was the British Army's first cruiser tank, used to exploit gaps created within the enemy's lines by the infantry tanks. While infantry tanks tended to be slow but heavily armoured, cruiser tanks placed much more emphasis on speed at the expense of armour, which we can see in the design of the A9. The A9 was armed with the standard British 2-pounder 40mm gun, a good weapon capable of penetrating 52mm of armour at 500 metres with standard AP shells. It also had the standard coaxial machine gun, but unlike later British tanks, it is also fitted with 2 separate machine gun turrets at the front of the tank. These provided little benefit while presenting a number of shot traps, decreasing the survivability of this vehicle. Another major issue is that, like with other British cruiser tanks, the armour maxes out at around 14mm, meaning anything from 50 cals and upwards are guaranteed to penetrate your vehicle, made worse by the aforementioned shot traps. You would hope that the lack of armour would make this vehicle pretty fast, but it only maxes out at around 25 miles per hour or 40 kilometers an hour, which isn't awful but would make this on the slower side of vehicles in Tier 1. One slight advantage to this vehicle is its large crew of 6, consisting of a driver, gunner, loader, commander and 2 machine gunners. The large number of crew members makes this somewhat harder to knock out, but this won't be too much of an issue for enemies, especially those with fast firing machine guns or autocannons. Interestingly, while the A9 didn't perform all that well and was withdrawn from service in 1941, the suspension and hull would go on to be used by the far more successful Valentine infantry tank, showing that if different design decisions had been made, this could have been a much better tank. So why should this vehicle be added to War Thunder? While it does have some issues, at Tier 1 most vehicles do suffer from one problem or another, and the Mark 1 is hardly unique in this. Adding it to the game would allow players to experience one of Britain's early and less well known vehicles, perhaps providing an alternative reserve vehicle to the later A13. Another vehicle I would like to see added to War Thunder is the A13 Mark III Covenanter tank, a later design of cruiser tank. This was a tank which was built in large numbers, with around 1,771 produced during World War II, which is not an insignificant sum, yet these vehicles were destined to never see combat, while initial mechanical problems garnered this vehicle a somewhat unfair reputation. Produced from the spring of 1940 to the end of 1941, the early Covenanters suffered from various issues, a big one being related to the frontally mounted radiators due to lack of space in the engine compartment, though there were also other minor issues, such as riveted armour being used despite being designed with welded armour, an increase in weight due to the armour being increased from 30mm to 40mm thick, and numerous other minor issues. A large part of these problems occurred due to producing this tank straight from the drawing board with no prototype, and a desire to get this vehicle into production as soon as possible, especially after the Dunkirk evacuation and the loss of large amounts of equipment, meaning new tanks were needed as quickly as possible. Due to the aforementioned cooling issues, these tanks were never sent to North Africa en masse, though a handful of vehicles were sent for testing purposes, and one possibly might have seen some form of combat. Instead, the vast majority of these vehicles were used for training until 1943. By now, many of the mechanical issues were fixed, but as the tank was now obsolete, they were ordered scrapped. In War Thunder, of course, you will not suffer from these issues, so the vehicle's performance will depend entirely on its in-game stats. As with many other British tanks, this is armed with the venerable 2-pounder 40mm gun, which as mentioned earlier is capable of penetrating 52mm of armour at 500 metres. The armour on the Covenanter is pretty good as well, being around 6 to 40mm, which is better than the Crusader tank already in War Thunder. Speed is also pretty good at 30 miles per hour or 48 kilometers an hour, compared to the Crusader's 27 miles per hour or 43 kilometers an hour. Not drastically faster, but every bit of speed helps of course. Lastly, the crew complement is 4, consisting of a driver, gunner, loader and commander. I would love to see this vehicle in War Thunder, as many people have not heard of this tank before, and for those of you who have heard of it, you've probably only really heard bad things about it, despite the fact that many of the issues were later fixed. From a pure stats point of view, this tank is just as well armed, more armoured and faster than the Crusader tank already in the British tech tree, so I see no reason not to add it. There might be some debate on whether to have this as a regular or premium tank, which is understandable considering it never actually saw combat, though personally, because it was built in such large numbers, I would like to see it added to the regular tech tree if possible, probably between the Crusader and the Cromwell at battle rating 2.7, though I can see the arguments for it being a premium. Regardless of how it is added, I would like to see this tank introduced to War Thunder in some fashion. Lastly, we have a vehicle that many people are no doubt familiar with. I am of course talking about the TOG-2, or TOG-2 Star as I've seen it referred to sometimes. Now, I thought I was already pretty familiar with this tank, having spoken about it when the British tank tech tree was announced, but it turns out there have been some developments since that video. You see, according to most secondary sources, and indeed the Bovington Tank Museum itself, the TOG-2 is supposed to be fitted with a 17-pounder 76.2mm gun. However, it seems some primary sources state the actual weapon intended to be used was a 28-pounder 3.7-inch or 94mm gun, the same one as used on the quick-firing 3.7 Ram premium tank in the British tech tree. Now, at some point somebody decided to settle the argument by physically measuring the calibre of the gun on the TOG-2 sitting in Bovington Tank Museum, and they found that the tank that is claimed to be fitted with a 17-pounder has actually been fitted with the 3.7-inch gun all along. They also recorded themselves while doing this, so we do have proof that they have done this and aren't just making it up. Now, disclaimer, some people claim the person is measuring the muzzle brake, or that they are measuring the barrel but bending the tape, giving a misleading figure. Personally, it seems to be mostly measured accurately to me, at least enough to prove it isn't a 17-pounder gun at the very least, so I will go ahead and assume it is fitted with the 3.7-inch gun, also links to that video below in the description. Now, assuming it will be added with the 3.7-inch gun, this would give an armour penetration of 192mm at 500 metres, better than the 17-pounder and better than the Panther's 75mm gun, but not quite as good as the Tiger II's 88mm. Unfortunately, the armour also seems to have some disagreement, as I've seen figures of 114mm to 50mm, while the Bovington Tank Museum gives a maximum thickness of 76.2mm, though considering the gun debacle I'm not sure how much stock I should put in this. Fortunately, there is less disagreement around the speed of this vehicle, with most sources agreeing around 8 to 9 miles per hour or 13 to 14 kilometers an hour, so definitely not the fastest vehicle in the world, though its gun does make up for this. The crew of the TOG-2 was 6, consisting of a driver, co-driver, commander, gunner and 2 loaders. Now, it should go without saying why I would like this tank to be added to War Thunder, because honestly, who could not want a literal land battleship, especially at the higher tiers? Of course, it could only be added as a premium tank, which is understandable, though I could see some not wanting it in the game at all, considering its prototype status. As for where it could be added with regards to battle rating, I would suggest somewhere around 5.7 to 6.0, though of course it could go higher or lower if required. Unfortunately, I can't see this vehicle being added anytime soon, especially with the conflicting information around it, but it would be nice to see it added to War Thunder at some point. So as you can see, we still have quite a few major British tanks that need to be added to War Thunder. Tanks that could help diversify the British tech tree and would provide new and exciting vehicles to play. While I would like to play the TOG-2, I would also love to see the A9, as this is a tank I very rarely see talked about, and it would be nice for it to get some love within War Thunder. Now, I'd like to see your opinions in the comments, whether you would like to see these tanks added to War Thunder. Are there any other British vehicles you would like to see added to the tech tree? I'd like to see your opinions in the comments below. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. I'm Terreno, and I'll see you next time.